Hello and welcome to the first in-season EFL debate of 23-24. This one's on the Championship. I'm delighted to be joined by my regular co-host, Oli Mann from the Sheffield United Way. How are you, Oli?
I'm very good, thank you, Gab. Yeah, I've had a pretty good week going back the last 7 days, so I've got certainly nothing to complain about. How are you feeling? Obviously, we had a bit of a gap last week because you weren't doing so well. You feeling a bit better?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had COVID, but tested negative now, so definitely on the right track. And even happier to be joined by Joe Bell from Argyle Life. Joe, great to have you on the show, mate. And it's not after a defeat this time.
I was going to say it would have been a lot better last week after a win, Gab, but we'll take it.
Absolutely, yeah. How do you reflect on Argyle's start to the season? Because I suppose there's a couple of things that I'd like to sort of raise first. The change of formation, which was a little bit of a surprise from the outside, and obviously you've been without Mike Cooper. So, how have you started with performance-wise with both those things in mind?
Yeah, I mean, we'll take them one by one. I think the formation change, has surprised everyone, really. I think we looked so comfortable with that three at the back system last year that we just sort of thought, well, we're coming into the Championship. Let's not fear everyone. We'll just go for it with the brand that's taken us up there. And then, yeah, it was one Tuesday night at Parkway. Shuey lines up with four at the back, and we're thinking, what's going on here? And if truth be told, Gab, I think we're playing just as good football in the two games that we've played so far with this system. It's allowing us to have players pop up absolutely everywhere, all over the pitch. You've got fullbacks who take up starting positions in the centre circle. You've got Mumba playing practically alongside Ryan Hardy, holding hands with Whitaker on the other side. And we can push forward two, or if not all three of the midfielders as well. So it's given us a lot of options. So yeah, I mean, the formation change has gone well, and then obviously missing out on Cooper still. We still don't quite know the time frame. I think the football club are going to keep that as quiet as they can. By all accounts, from what I hear, it's going really well.
Yeah,
I
earlier
think
than expected, from
Coops.
what I gather.
Yeah, I think Coops gave an interview recently to either Chris Errington of the Herald, or might even have been to the club website, where he said that he was a couple of weeks ahead of schedule, which would be really promising. Because I think we were all worried it might drag into late October, November. But obviously, if we can get him back a lot earlier, then you're not going to say no to one of the best keepers in the Football League here. So
No, I mean it's a funny situation, I think, for Connor Hazard, because I guess how well he performs kind of dictates the conversation around getting Cooper back. Because if he plays really well, everyone's going to be like, yeah, really chilled about bringing Cooper back. And then if he plays bad, everyone's going to be like, get him back.
But the weird thing about Connor Hazard is we had a very similar situation last year with Callum Burton, that it depends which half of the fan base you talk to as to whether or not Connor Hazard's had a good start or not. And I always have to go into our podcast with a bit of a tin hat on and the shield in front of me batting for the defence, because I don't get it. I mean, the first day of the season against Huddersfield, he was kicking into a gale and everyone was moaning that his distribution wasn't great. But the way I look at it is that he's come from Celtic, he'll have come from Helsinki, and I'd imagine at both of those clubs, they probably go long from goal kicks and set pieces, whereas at Argyle, you're very rarely going to see us ever go long from a goal kick. We're always going to try and play out from the back. And we're now asking him to not only save shots, but also be a ball-playing goalkeeper, which Cooper does so well. And for Hazard, it's always going to take him a bit of time to adjust. Now, the weird thing was against Huddersfield, he had very little saves to make anyway. So all people were really looking at was his distribution, which I felt was a little bit harsh. And then at Watford on last week, not only was his shot stopping brilliant, but his distribution was much, much better. But as I say, I put the week before down to the fact he was kicking into a gale. So I'm not too fussed about him. I mean,
Plymouth. It is very windy over there.
yeah, we do seem to catch the wind quite well. But yeah, I mean, he's 6'7", 6'8". He's a great, big, imposing figure. So I've absolutely no concerns with him being in goal. I feel sorry for Callum Burton, I really do,
Sure.
because as I said, I was very much the defence barrister last year for Burton on our podcast. I thought he took a lot of unfair criticism. And actually, he really stood up when a lot of people, especially outside of the city, didn't think he would be able to. And I think everyone sort of assumed that given those performances at the end of last year, that he would just carry on this year. And obviously, when we brought Hazard in, it's probably a bit of a kick in the teeth for him. But he will hope that he gets to keep his place in the League Cup tie in a fortnight's time against Palace. But time will tell. Obviously, Schumacher will want to put out a strong side for that. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Ollie, isn't it? When players get their opportunity through circumstances, because you are going to be held to the sort of the yardstick of the player that you're replacing. I remember when Paul Coots got injured for Sheffield United, and then Lundstrom came in, and it almost felt like there was a lot of criticism of Lundstrom for not being Paul Coots, and it's a difficult dynamic sometimes, isn't it?
It's really hard to manage, and let's be frank. Everybody gets criticism for not being Paul Coots because, only one man can make it, and that's Paul himself, and he deserves all of the credit in the world for being that one man. But no, it's really difficult. I think particularly in goal as well, because obviously clubs have an undisputed number one. It's the way of football that you have a number one goalkeeper. And so when your number one is out, everybody knows, and there's an added expectation because everybody knows it's your number two. And so United saw it a little bit last season when Fotheringham was suspended. Adam Davies comes in. It doesn't really matter if he does brilliantly. He's still going to be the number two. All he can do is do badly, really, because you can't make yourself the number one, because I'm sure you'd agree, and I might be wrong if I've got the reading of this wrong. I do apologise, but Mike Cooper is one of the best keepers outside the Premier League. I think there'd be a lot of teams in the Premier League that would go at his age, the experience he's got, the qualities that he got. We'd want him in because he's a fantastic goalkeeper. And so regardless of how well they're going to do to start this season, I think knowing that Cooper comes back in as the number one has always got to be really difficult for a keeper, because you're not going to earn the shirt. You're just going to keep it warm until the first choice comes back. Is that the reading that you've got of it at Plymouth? Is it just waiting for Cooper, really?
That's exactly what Schumacher said to the written media after the Huddersfield game, when it was mentioned about, why was Hazard constantly trying to play out from the back when Huddersfield were pressing and it perhaps wasn't working as well, and the crowd were getting on his back. Schumacher said, well, at the end of the day, that's what we asked Cooper to do. And, I think they all see deep down, they probably all know that Cooper is going to come back in and take the shirt. And for example, there were a few people groaning at the Huddersfield game, the fact that Burton was coming out and he wasn't collecting balls at corners. He was trying to punch them and get rid of them that way. But that's what Cooper does. Cooper very rarely comes and collects from set pieces. He'll always try and punch it away or parry it into safety. And why would you suddenly change just because you got somebody in for 5 or 6 games when as soon as your number one comes back, you're just going to go back to exactly how you had it for him? So I think everyone expects Cooper to take the shirt back. I'd be very surprised if he didn't.
I think managing the fans is really difficult in that scenario, though, as well. Because like you say, the groans immediately come out. You referenced it there about having to be the case for the defence quite a lot of the time. And I think that's always really difficult for a goalkeeper, because that feeling of fan expectation just weighs so much on them. I always find, I go back again to that sort of example that we had last season, where it was his first game at Bramall Lane. He'd never started for United before. 10 minutes in, someone passes the ball back to him. And like you said, there's a way that teams are used to playing. So we passed it back to Davis onto his left foot, which would have been perfect for Fotheringham. But he's a right-footed goalkeeper. And him having to take that touch, immediately the fans, oh God, what's he doing? Oh, what's happened? And then by which point, you see the nerves go into the players on the pitch, and it's so hard. The one, I think, possibly the hardest role in football is being the number 2 keeper when you actually have to play, because the fans are so nervous about you all the time.
Yeah, and it's hard to get some. Hopefully, in Hazard's case, he at least does have a run of games, so he can build up some consistency. And sounds like he started quite well. But I want to talk to you about the concept of putting Ballymumba further forward, because I suppose I would have thought of it in terms of actually wanting him maybe in a deeper, like a wing-back position, where you're actually more likely to get him on the ball. But from what you're saying, he's able to have more of an impact on games with Whittaker and Hardy higher up the pitch.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a couple of times last year when I was on Gab that particularly when it came around to January, if you remember, we had the big discussion about whether Whittaker and Mumba would be recalled. And I think I was quite boisterous in the fact I came on and said, no, neither of them will go back. And obviously I ended up with my nose broken when Swansea recalled Whittaker. But the one point we always had with Mumba was that he was great going forward. Nobody had any criticisms about him going forward, but perhaps he was just a little bit less consistent defending wise. So I think when they looked at who they were going to bring in, they looked at a system that might suit players like a Oli Mumba. And then when they brought Kesler Hayden in as the first loan signing, I think everyone sort of took that as gospel that, right, that's it, Mumba's not coming back. And then, of course, a few weeks later, Mumba comes in, and then you're thinking, right, well, how are we going to get the two of them in the same side? People are thinking, right, does that mean Joe Edwards is going to, he's not going to be the first choice right back? Because at this point, nobody had seen the formation we were going to play. We'd assumed that we were going four at the back just to test the waters, but on the opening day, we'd go to three at the back. And then when that first team sheet was announced and Edwards, Kesler, Hayden and Mumba were playing and we'd seen how we played in pre-season with the 4-3-3, you're thinking, right, well, Mumba's going to be a lot further forward. And the pair of them were just outstanding in that Huddersfield game. Like Mumba just had a license to be wherever he wanted on that left side, even on the right side at times. Like they're just all free spirits in that side, Gab. And going forward, Mumba has got to be one of the most exciting young players I think we've got in this division because he is so carefree going forward. It's crazy. I mean, the goal against Huddersfield, he didn't care who was running with him. He didn't care who he was running into. He was carrying that ball 30, 40 yards and he was going to get a shot away.
And he always seems to play with a smile on his face as well. That's the thing I love about him.
The thing, he referenced it in the press before the Huddersfield game, that it was all about enjoying his football, wanting to enjoy his football and being wanted, because I don't think ever really at Norwich he was wanted by the managers he was under. And Schumacher's obviously instilled an ethos, and there's a real characteristic about the club that everyone's wanted. You're part of the dressing room. Once you're in, that's it. You're in the family. And they really make the incoming players welcome. Hence why a few of them have come back this year on permanent deals. So he enjoys his football, as you say. He plays with a smile on his face, and he's just so gifted. He really is so gifted. And when you've got him playing further forward, and you've got options at the back where he's not going to be needed, it's just such a relief, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about the centre-back partnership of Dan Scarr and Lewis Gibson, because Gibson in particular seems to have had a fantastic start to the season, doesn't he?
What a signing on a free transfer, Gav. I mean, we referenced the recruitment in the deep dive in the summer, and we all said, Gibson, he had a good year with Bristol Rovers last year. Duck to water doesn't look out of place at this level. Very rare. I mean, everyone had told us he was a ball-playing defender. I think you could count on one hand how many headers he's missed. Like, he's an absolute rock at the back. And alongside Dan Scarr, I eulogized about Scarr a lot last year. I think everyone knows that he was probably one of the surprise packages. When Argyle signed him from Walsall, people were probably thinking, right, could he step into a playoff-esque material side? Well, actually, not only did he look all comfortable in the title winning side in League One, he now looks at home in the Championship as well. And you think that we've still got Galloway and Macaulay Gillespie coming back from injuries. We've still got Julio Pleguezelo, who was outstanding in the cup tie against Leyton Orient.
Yeah, he's supposed to be really good as well.
On the bench. He looks very good. I mean, he didn't miss a tackle against Leyton Orient, and he carries the ball forward, similar to what James Wilson did a few times last year. But you look at it and you think, well, Gibson and Scarr are back there, and if we're going to play this back four all season, Pleguezelo is going to struggle to get in. But then you're also looking at Gillespie, who was probably one of our star men last year. He's going to struggle to get back into the side. And that's before you've got the quality of Brendan Galloway when he's fit. So they've really seized the moment, the pair of them, and Gibson in particular, because of how he plays and how young he is. He fits the mold of every player the club are trying to sign. They're young, they're hungry, they're determined to get better, and they're just carefree, Gab. They don't care who's in front of them. I was on the Total Saints podcast at the weekend previewing Saturday's game against Southampton. And I promised them, look, Sheffield Wednesday sat in a low block against you and invited you to pass the ball 942 times, however many it was. I can guarantee that will not happen at Home Park this weekend. I said that they're carefree. They don't care who you are. They'll give you the respect for, the club that you are. I said, but as soon as that first whistle goes, you're just another 11 men in front of them. They really will give it to Southampton as good as they've got.
Love it. Oli, from what you've heard there, you must be feeling maybe more confident in Plymouth Argyle in sort of their chance of beating the drop.
Oh, I'm buoyed. Never mind beating the drop. They're going up. No, I think it's interesting for me, and I think judging Plymouth is a really interesting position because I'm sure you're used to this, and you're used to teams or commentators or just people in general writing Plymouth off a little bit, not giving you the respect you deserve for the season that you had last year. Talking about Ipswich winning the championship, talking about Wednesday being Wednesday. And so you probably feel as though you've gone under the radar and you've been a little bit missed. And I think hearing the way you've just talked about the squad and the players that you've brought in gives me a lot of confidence that those people who are lazily making those assumptions will be proved wrong and that you'll be able to say, look at this, we've turned up and we're going to show you why we were the best team in League One last season, why we finished above Ipswich and Wednesday and the bigger budgets and everything else. But I think for me, one of the things that's really come out is obviously you've got quite a lot of players, you're quite well recruited through your defence, through midfield. But I feel as though there still is a bit of a gap up front, obviously behind Hardy, behind that sort of size. I think you're looking at the loan market, maybe to try and bring somebody in. Obviously, Ennis left over the summer. Where do you feel you stand on that? Is it centre forward where you think you need to focus that recruitment now for the next couple of weeks?
Yes, just quickly, Ollie, on the point you just made about going under the radar and, how the performances the first couple of games, it was referenced again by Schumacher. I think it was both before and after the Watford game that he wants everyone to see now that this club and these players deserve and they belong in this division. And if anyone doubted it before the Watford game, then that performance over the 95 minutes will have proved it because there were bodies on the line. Watford had a lot of the ball. They had some really good chances, but equally, the best chance of the game fell to Argyle. And we probably should have won it. And you're saying, great, we've got a 0-0 at Watford. We got a point, second game of the season. What a result that is. But deep down, I'd imagine those coaches were in the office on Monday morning looking back at the chance that Randall had and thinking, could have been 2 from 2. And it's a different thing there. But that leads me very nicely onto the second point about we've recruited well at defence. We've recruited well in midfield. We're one player away, I think, from being totally happy with the recruitment, and that is a striker. And as you say, it will be a loan signing. We brought in, obviously, Whitaker Mumba for club record transfer fees of around $1 million. We brought in the free transfer of Gibson and Pleguezuelo and what have you. We've got one more loan to use up. You're obviously allowed 5 and what have you. So we've got 1 to use there. They want, by all accounts, somebody with a Premier League pedigree who's got championship experience. Now, I've played a lot of Football Manager. You might be able to get one of them on loan on our budget. Whether or not you'll be able to get one in reality is another thing. But that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody who's capable in the championship. The one name that keeps getting knocked about is Josh Coburn from Middlesbrough. How possible that's going to be now they've just got rid of Chuba Akpom, I don't know. But I thought he had a really good year last year with Bristol Rovers. He really made a difference in the game at their place when we played them last year. It was a tough game for him down here when they went down to 10 men and we battered them. But and he would fit the mold. He's a young player. He's hungry. He'd want to get better. They've improved the coaching as well at Home Park, so that would help. But yeah, we're 1 striker away. I think that would give us 3. Then we'd have Hardy, Ben Waine, who've both started the season really well, both look really sharp. But you just need that one player then, an injury or a suspension or what have you, just to give you that depth. And then I think they'll sit back and think that's a bloody good summer of recruitment.
Yeah, well, certainly very impressive so far. Just before we let you go, Joe, because we want to bring in Brady, who's a Huddersfield Town fan as well. I just want to ask you: are you more confident than you were going into the season that Argyle are beating the drop?
Oli mentioned it earlier. We're going up, Gab, aren't we? Yeah, you're in it to win it. Yeah, I think it was funny because before the deep dive that me and Aaron came on with you, I don't think we'd signed Whitaker and Mumba. And I think we were sort of looking at it thinking 20th, 21st, you'd snap your hand off. What a great season that'd be, given our comparative budget to the rest of the league. I think even if you looked at our budget towards teams that will end up finishing 20th, 21st, 19th, it will still be well inferior of them. But I'll just let slip that I don't think we will be finishing 19th, 20th, 21st. We've shown every quality I think we needed to in the first two games. We were excellent against Huddersfield in an attacking sense. We were really solid and resolute against Watford. They're showing everything they need to. Now, Saturday will be a different test against Southampton because obviously very, very good with possession, a lot of quality. We're going up against a back four of Walker, Peters, Bednarek, Stevens, and Manning. So, I mean, that's going to be a difficult task in its own right to break down. But, as I said, they're fearless. They won't fear anyone in the division. The supporters are just really excited. And, yeah, I think anywhere between, if I was to put a figure on it now, anywhere between 13th and 16th, I think will be that nice, comfortable mid-table. But, and this isn't just me being boisterous, don't be surprised if we pushed into the top half because, as I said, they're fearless. They play good football. We've got a great young manager, and who knows, a bit of January recruitment as well could fire us towards the top half comfortably, but you never know. It's a tough league, Gab. You can't get away from it. As confident as I am, it is a tough league. We're going up against some huge clubs, some massive budgets, but the first 2 weeks have calmed everyone down and showed us actually we do belong here, we deserve to be here, and we're not just going to make up the numbers.
I certainly aren't. Listen, Joe, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. All the best to Argyle, and keep up the great stuff on Argyle Life as well, mate.
Yeah, thanks, mate. No problem. See you later.
Cheers, Joe.
See you later, mate.
Delighted to bring in Brady from And He Takes That Chance, the Huddersfield Town podcast. How are you, Brady?
I'm good, Gab. How are you both?
Yeah, we're really well, thank you. Really appreciate your time. Just if you can reflect for us on Huddersfield Town's start to the season, because no points so far, but that performance against Leicester, as we discussed on your podcast the other day, gave you quite a lot of encouragement.
Yeah, it has. It's really strange because obviously you consider how before Warnock came in at the end of last season, how having 3 defeats in a row would have been a nightmare. But I think you touched on it there. It's the manner of the performances. The Leicester performance was very encouraging. Ultimately, Lee Nichols, who has been absolutely resolute and saved us a lot of points since he's joined from MK Dons, makes a mistake, which is very rare for him. And that's how we lose the game. It's encouraging. I think, well, obviously, Gab, I know you've tipped us for relegation, and I certainly think we're going to struggle, even with the wizard that is Neil Warnock. But I think encouraging signs. And as we kind of talked on it, looking ahead to the game against Middlesbrough, I think it's a good time to play them. And Neil always has a extra incentive against old clubs that have wronged him. He certainly feels he was wronged by Middlesbrough, whether he was. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that, but I think the performances have been encouraging. I'm sure we'll come on to it. I'm still a little bit concerned about the squad, as we kind of talked about, but it's okay. It's strange because I think the performances have been there, whereas if I know you just had Argyle Life on, I actually felt that was quite an open game, really, and they just took their chances and we didn't. So I think encouraging. But if the defeats carry on, it doesn't matter if we're playing well. We need points on the board.
On that, obviously, I know we referenced the squad there, but for me, there is another question, and this is a naive question from somebody outside the club who is going to ask you a question that you can completely disregard if you think it's nonsense. And I'll not be offended. But one of the things that's overhanging the season for me is over the summer, I was really shocked that Warnock signed another deal, to be honest. I didn't expect him to extend his stay. I thought he'd come in. He'd done the job that Warnock does, where he can then ride off into the sunset as the White Knight to have saved you from relegation. Do you feel as though Warnock extending his stay was the right decision for the club and for sort of Warnock himself? Do you think he'll be able to keep you progressing? Or do you feel as though that if this, if 2 defeats becomes 1 point from 5 games, or it becomes 3 points from 6, 7 games, do you think he will stay for 12 months? Do you think there's a chance that he's cut short and he doesn't last all that long this season? Because that to me just seems to be a risk with Huddersfield, that if it is a bad start, I'm worried that Warnock maybe won't be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I'll have to be careful about how I go about this because, Town fans love Neil and I don't want like a Hulk hand smashing through my wall. I just
sorry about that.
no, I like it. Oh, he's no. Cards on the table. I didn't particularly want Neil Warnock this season. That's quite a controversial thing among the fan base. Look, I think what he did was incredible. We were dead and buried last season. Did an absolutely fantastic job. No one can fault him, and you'd be foolish to say so. And I will say this: Neil Warnock knows more about that club than I do. So
of course.
However, I do think it's we've seen. I can certainly understand the reasons behind Neil staying there. I think we've got a new owner. He's introducing a lot of new things. Although he's managed a club in the US and very successfully, he's admitted himself, it's a lot different to English football, and he's new to it. So I can completely see if all the changes are going off the pitch, and you certainly got a lot of risk in terms of off the pitch changes. Makes sense to go with someone who on paper is an expert in this division and, he eliminate as much of that on the pitch as you possibly can. I think my concern, and it's interesting because Gab said, he wasn't sure about, Warnock in terms of him staying there, and you've kind of asked a similar thing. And I suppose I've been thinking on what you've both said about that, and I hadn't really considered that. I think Neil's taken it as a favour to help the ownership. He's said as much. I'm sure he's getting paid well for it as well because,
I'm just thinking it was fair time. Like,
exactly.
Not expecting.
We all do stuff for the kindness of our heart, Gab. So look, I can certainly see a lot of reasons for it. I think the reason I wasn't so keen on it was because, like you say, how can you top what you did last season? I don't think you can. I think weirdly, the end of the season is probably one of my favourite seasons supporting Huddersfield recently, just because it felt like from the came out of nowhere. We didn't deserve to do it. I would have liked us to have gone for someone a bit more long term. And people then say to me, "Yeah, but always long term in football, you lose 5 games and you get sacked." We were heavily linked with Michael Duff, who's gone to Swansea. That's the type of person.
That would be the one, I think.
Yeah. So if there was any truth in that, that's something I really would have been keen for. Obviously, we've been linked with Steven Schumacher, but so has everyone in this division. I would have liked someone like that because I think the issue we're kind of having, and we're seeing this in terms of recruitment, is we're bringing in people on 1-year deals or on loans. So the issue you've got is, and I have no idea. This is pure speculation. I've got no insider knowledge to this. How can you, if I'm a player who wants to, get their next contract, am I going to move to somewhere where I don't know the manager's going to be after a year? Am I, necessarily going to want to play for Neil Warnock? I think Neil Warnock gets a lot of unfair credit about his style of football. I think he, you compare himself to the football dinosaurs, if you like, of like Allardyce, for example. Neil Warnock's actually kept up to date. That's why he's still doing a good job when he's at.
Oh, yeah.
However, his style's not to everyone's taste. And I could certainly see why maybe if you're a Premier League club, you historically, in the reputation of Neil Warnock, you maybe don't want to send one of the youngsters there. Again, might be wrong, but I think there's just concerns with that. And I suppose and I will give the ownership a chance to see this, and they've only got the feet under the table, so it's going to take time, and they're going to make mistakes. That's what every new owner does. However, I do feel like this is kicking the can down the road for a year. Yeah. I do worry about Neil if it doesn't go well. If he just won't, I don't really see the motivation for him. Apart from, like I say, he'll be getting paid well for it. I don't really see the motivation for him staying on. If things start to go well. And he's kind of, in his opening press conference when he signed his new 1-year deal, he was saying, like, if it's not working, we can have a conversation about it. And I think that would be quite a difficult question if it comes to that. And I think the squad currently, as it is, that could be a conversation that happens. But there's still a long time to go in the transfer window.
Of course. And I will apologise for asking you such an awkward question that put you
No,
on
no,
such a difficult spot.
Yeah, we won't ask any difficult questions here.
It's not our style, Gab. That's not our style. We ask the easy ones, fluff pieces.
Very middle of the road we are, Ollie. I want to ask you about the squad because it's one that interests me, Brady, because we've sort of talked to you about the concerns about the lack of quality and depth, possibly. Have the opening couple of performances done anything to sort of sway you a little bit on that? Because you did compete very well against potentially a runaway champion in Leicester City.
Yes and no. So I think certainly there's people who were maybe further along than I thought. We kind of touched on it, but Keane Harrott, who was at League Two level with Bradford last season, when he's come on in pre-season or started, or in the Carabao Cup defeat against Middlesbrough, he's looked really sharp. Carl Hudlin's surprised me as well, our 6'9" striker, and he just his pure size causes chaos for defenders. They're a lot further along than I thought. I think the issue is, and you saw it against Leicester, is we just have players who, and this is no disrespect to them, I think our starting 11 is actually okay. I think it's just if we have injuries, as you do throughout a long season in the Championship, that's where I think we're going to struggle. And that quality, for example, like Hellick, it fell to him and he shinned it over the bar. Like, you don't really want a centre-back there. Danny Ward had a couple of good chances, and he had a great season to Carlos, but he's never been a super prolific striker. I think he needs someone.
He can get real power on his headers. That kind of surprised me, because I remember watching him early in his career, and he was just looked like almost quite a lightweight centre forward that would just keep running. And then all of a sudden, last season, he just seemed to have that extra element of I say last season, I'm on about the year before, seemed to have that extra element of physicality about him, and seems he had that one header that from the edge of the penalty area. So yeah, I kind of feel like he's become probably quite an important player. Hopefully you can try and get the best out of him this season.
Yeah, definitely. I look like he's not a prolific goal scorer, but I really like Danny Ward. I think there's some Town fans who, you want a striker to score goals, but I think he really fits in a Warnock team. And if Neil Warnock's in charge, Danny Ward's going to be starting unless he's injured. I think the issue with that squad is I don't think it has the quality really at the moment in terms of your real difference makers. And I know it's hard to get that, and we've not got the biggest budget, so that's where you look at your loan signings. Hopefully you strike lucky like we have with Levi Colwell, for example, get someone in an attacking sense. But yeah, it's just I think we're asking a lot, although we've got some talented youngsters. I mean, Brahima Diarra had a really good performance against Leicester, but this is a guy who is very young, and he's not made more than I think it's 15 Championship starts. It's asking a lot for you.
Do you think he can do a bit of what Sorba Thomas did a couple of years ago, Brahima Diarra?
Potentially. I just think my argument is, and we've seen it, you know young players, and that's the whole point. They need to learn on the job, but I just think it's asking a lot. Ideally, I'd like the squad to be in a place where we don't have to rely on Brahima Diarra to play 46 games and be outstanding and be your main creator. I kind of see we do have a lot of talented youngsters. Obviously, I touched on Harrott and Hudlin, and Pat Jones is another one, a winger who's very exciting. But I think you're asking a lot of these young lads when really, in an ideal world, anything they do is a bonus. You should have those players in place. I think that's my concern, because it's just we've seen it. Ryan Schofield who's moved to Portsmouth. He came in under Carlos in that first season as a really young goalkeeper, started well, and then we just kept playing him when he clearly lost confidence. And I think I really hope he gets his career back on track at Portsmouth, but I think that did, he couldn't really play in the Town shirt again because we just left it for too long. So that's my concern. And if they've said they're going to bring in people, and Kevin Nagel said, look out for some announcements this week. So we'll see who they are. But I think we need some quality, because it doesn't look like a team that's going to score goals at the moment, really.
No, I think that's fair, and I do agree because I think I'll cards on the table. You know, you referenced it before. I also had Huddersfield to go down in my predictions for this season. I think the thing for me is, as I look at the squad, is that you've referenced it yourself a little bit. That this summer's you've not really brought in that additional quality that maybe the club needed. You know, last season was a remarkable safety towards the end of the season. You know, it came out of nowhere and it was fantastic, but a lot of it was built on. You know, I know people sometimes, depending on your perspective, hate XG, but a lot of it was built on that kind of going against the XG and winning games that maybe you've won on the margins rather than that you've gone out there and really taken the points. And so for me, it needed to be a summer of sort of revitalization because the three teams who've come up are better than the three teams that went down. And so it's immediately trying to find, okay, so well, who are the three teams that I think Huddersfield are going to finish above? And I just think we really need to see that recruitment in the next 2 weeks to make that difference, to make the squad better than it was last season and not just relying on Warnock magic, because Warnock magic is great sometimes, but not always, you know. And I say that from my perspective as well. Obviously, being a United fan, we've had the same in the Premier League where our team is just not ready at all for the season. And we've got 2 weeks now to make it ready. And I think a big part of that is then if they come in this 2 weeks, how long does it take to get them up to speed? That's my concern for Huddersfield. Do you think sort of loan players, do you expect them to hit the ground running? Or do you think it is probably, you know, you get to the first international break and that's when we'll start to see new signings actually make an impact on the Huddersfield squad?
I think it depends who we bring in. I mean, to be honest, this isn't going to excite fans. I feel like I'm being a right misery today for Huddersfield.
It's my fault for bad questions.
No. To be honest, like if you're going to go for Neil Warnock, you got to give Neil Warnock what he wants. Like, you know, Junior Hoylett's been linked with us, and that's not going away. Like,
what do you think he does want, Brady? How many more additions do you think you do need?
I think he said about 2 or 3. So I think that's. I mean, we've only brought in at the time of speaking to you guys a free agent goalkeeper in Chris Maxwell, who's a very good number 2. If he is a number 2, you know, hopefully Touchwood. You know,
it's not exactly the signing that's a game changer, is it?
No. And Tom Edwards, who, you know, we've signed on loan from Stoke, and Stoke fans weren't particularly complimentary about him, and I think he's done okay. He's done okay. Yeah. It's not an exciting window at the moment. I think I'm not going to lie to you guys. I think we definitely need a striker. They've identified that. Neil Warnock has said that. I think we need our issue is midfield. I mean, Gab, I was saying to yourself, you know, Jonathan Hogg is 34, 35. He can't play a full season anymore because he's got a recurring hip injury. The next oldest player after that is David Kasumi. I think he's 23 years old. And then behind that, you've got a lot of young players. So we just need a bit of experience. I think the type of players Neil Warnock is going to go for are experience. I think we've got enough young players, and although we've really benefited from Premier League loans in the past, you know, obviously Emile Smith-Rowe and Levi Colwell are the ones that really stand out. I don't really see us getting them. I think we're going to go for experience. I mean, you know, I'm not being funny. I'm not half surprised we've not seen the old band back together because Warnock knows what he's going to get out of them, and they're not particularly exciting.
I was going to say Jagielka's available on a free, so Jagielka is out there.
If we get a couple of injuries, I'm not going to stay. Like, I don't know. It's I wouldn't be surprised if we get some experience, and I think that's what we need. I think it's really difficult to be patient. I mean, you guys will know it's really hard to be patient in the transfer window, especially when you have a look around. I mean, for example, Cardiff, who should be down. Really, people have predicted them to be down near the bottom. You look at them; they're on a transfer embargo, and they've brought in Aaron Ramsey, Carlin Grant on loan. You know, like all these really.
Or in that Greek centre back, he looks really good, Dimitris Goutas. So it's
exactly. So I think
out the window,
I think it's hard to be like, well, what are we doing? But look, like we can't judge this team until the end of the window. I think the business plan they've submitted to the EFL, boring stuff that you shouldn't really have to know as a fan, but I suppose it's good to know. I think, you know, the agreement they've signed off, because it's been a lot stricter in terms of the new ownership test, from what I understand. I think we have to be quite stringent in the first year. But the owner has said he's not afraid to put the money in. But it sounds like the first year might be a bit, you know, we might be a bit, tight purse strings, and then hopefully we see some investment in this team. But I think it's going to be a tough season for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I want to bring in Oli Hargreaves from the Better Pie podcast very shortly. But just before I let you go, Brady, are you feeling more optimistic that Huddersfield Town are going to beat the drop or make some progress this season after the first couple of games? Are you more pessimistic, or are you feeling at about the same level?
About the same. I think we can. I think what is the encouraging thing is because we've got Neil Warnock, we won't see dire performances like we did under Mark Fotheringham or Danny Schofield. I think we're always going to be in games. I think it's going to be tight, classic cliche. It's going to be tight margins. So I don't think my opinion's really changed on that. I had predicted us to be, well, to be honest, to just stay up by the skin of our teeth because that's what we seem to do. But I'd kind of caveated with if we get in the signings Warnock once and he's happy with them, I think we could finish 18th. But that's kind of the season.
That's
I'm not
the dream.
Well, yeah, no, but you've got to be realistic. But yeah,
no, I know, yeah. I think that's probably where Huddersfield are for the moment. But hopefully, under Kevin Nagel's ownership, there can be some brighter times ahead, long term. Listen, Brady, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for joining us, and all the best with the Take That Chance podcast
Thanks,
for the
guys.
season and beyond.
Cheers for having me on. Take care.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you very
worries. Great to introduce Oli Hargreaves from the Butter Pie podcast of Preston North End. How are you, Oli?
I'm good, thanks, Gab. How are you?
Yeah, always good to have you on, mate. How are you feeling about North End start to the season? Because the performances seem to have been pretty promising so far.
Yeah, a lot more optimistic than I was last time I was on the debate, Gab. It's seemingly. I think it might have been me being overly pessimistic last time because I was so with North End. You're so used to the same old continuous performances, continuous transfer windows, and it's just, to be fair, it's blown my expectations out of the transfer window already. Albeit this saga with Cannon that's going on longer than anything that I've ever done. It's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. So as long
He'll
as
go
that
to
gets
Middlesbrough on deadline day. We both know that.
He'll probably end up staying at Everton, knowing all this. But it's been a good start to the season. I didn't expect us to pick up many points in the first two games, and we've got 4 from a Bristol City side that have had a fantastic pre-season. They were beating teams.
Played their side against them as well, by all accounts.
Exactly. And to be fair, I thought we should have won against Bristol City as well. And then going into Sunderland, I'm thinking, they've got Patrick Roberts, they've got Jack Clark, and we're having to play a 17-year-old Kean Best out wide. So I was still pessimistic, and I weren't really expecting much. But smash and grab. It wasn't the prettiest performances, but he got the job done. So,
let's talk about Frockshire then, Oli, because he looks like such an exciting. I know Oli's a big fan of him. He just looks like there was 1 or 2 flicks and tricks against Bristol City on the opening day. Just really caught my eye.
Yeah, fantastic player. You can tell the quality he already has within the first couple of games. I think one of the first showings was in pre-season against Aberdeen, where at the edge of the box he's hitting ball first time, nice and early, and it's flown into the back of the net. So showing off that, and then he's brought it into the Championship with a couple of flicks, albeit we didn't score from them, but you can tell the quality he has, and then being in the right place at the right time to score past Patterson on Saturday in front of the Town End's only going to give him more confidence. But you can tell he's got so much confidence about him. He wears his socks low, probably wears tiny shin pads. It's not the sort of player you expect from a Preston North End team either, but a proper exciting player. And to be fair, if he carries on the way that he is, I don't expect him to be a Preston North End player come next season. He's top drawer. He kind of reminds me of like Jack Grealish with his low socks and wanting the ball and wanting to carry the ball. I'm not saying he's anything like Jack Grealish, but it reminds me of kind of like that kind of player who wants the ball. He gets you off your seat, and to be fair, he can score a goal. He can make something out of nothing. So yeah, really, really exciting. He fills the gap about around Daniel Johnson leaving, which was massive shoes to fill You know, he likes to play in that 10 position. He likes to roam and come out wide a bit. So fair play to the recruitment team. They seemingly got it spot on. 4-year deal for Mads. So long may it continue. You know what? I'm all optimistic about this. He'll probably get injured next week. So, yeah. Yeah, he's a fantastic player and really exciting one, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Oli, coming to you on that Blade Oli. Blade Oli.
I was like, which one do you mean? This is confusing.
It's like that scene, like on the top of the building.
Yeah.
I see. I think we've lost Gab, but he was coming to me anyway. I think what's interesting for me, Oli, is that sort of commentary that we had, obviously, a lot about Preston last season, where, you know, you had that start to the season where it was, you know, consecutive 0-0s, and it almost felt as though you were never going to concede. It feels as though this season there's a lot more positivity about you going forwards. Obviously, you are still missing that sort of central Tom Cannon, but do you feel as though you've got quite a nice base this season? Obviously, you've brought in some good defenders with Watmore and Ramsey. Do you think it's a more rounded team? I know, obviously, maybe through the summer you weren't quite as confident, but it feels like it's coming together.
Yeah, it does, Ollie. It feels weird saying Malvern name, but you know,
it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it feels more rounded, and I feel like with the players that we brought in, even like Will Keane, you know, more of an established player up there who can put the ball in the back of the net. And yeah, as you mentioned, Ramsey, albeit he's not played so much. I think he's got a little bit of a niggling injury, yeah. But then we got like Watmore, and you know, the way I know he's only played a couple of times, but you can tell his composure on the ball. He's wanting to play forward. We've brought in experience, and then we've also added a bit of youth around there and a bit of excitement. Obviously, we're missing Tom Cannon, but you know, you look at our front bit. You know, if Cannon does come, and I'll say if he is or not. But I mean, you got a forward line of, you know, Brown, Mads, Keane, Cannon. And, you know, for you know, a team like Preston to have that base of players, you know, it's really exciting, you know. And then you look at further back, you know, we've got a youth player in Keane Best playing out wide. Obviously, Robbie Brady's injured, but, you know, he's doing his part. He's doing very well, to be fair to him. So it's one of those, really. We do have that base and still core of players because it was slowly getting limited bit by bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like with the players that we've already brought in, even Dwayne Holmes, you know, championship quality, we've got that standard of player that, you know, you can trust them. And I think that's what Lowe likes, because recently with these previous squads, he's been more conservative. I'm not sure if that's a trust or anything, but this season he's starting to more open up and play the style that he was going to be at Plymouth, banging on about the brand, you know, more attacking, more of a 3-5-2 rather than a 5-3-2. It just feels a lot more fluid. It allows us to do more, even play a 3-4-3, play Mads out wide. It just gives us more options, and it's nice to watch, Ollie. It's nice.
That's good to hear, because I think that's the main thing sometimes is one of the things that I'm really interested in, and one that I always come back to with Preston, is it does feel as though it's been sort of mid-table. Like, you've not been pushing to playoffs, but you've also not been in any relegation battles. It's been a fairly consistent run for a few seasons now. And I think the thing that I'm always concerned about in that kind of environment is, are the fans, is it still fun to watch? You know, is it at least an enjoyable mid-table? It sounds as though this season you're building up to be a much more enjoyable kind of team to watch and better for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say anything much yet about 2 games, but obviously the performances have been great, to be fair, in these 2 performances. Looking at Sunderland, it may not have been the most enticing on the eye, but it gets the job done. You know, I don't think any Preston fan would mutter, you know, that was naff to watch, but we beat Sunderland, who were in the playoffs last season. You know, you get 3 points, everyone goes home happy. So, yeah, coming up against teams like I know we were playing Sheff Wednesday and playing away. I know our league table position of playing away last season was like 4th. So it's clear, like, he goes for it in away games. And and he was more conservative at home. So I feel like he's kind of changing that up a bit. So yeah, it's an exciting place to be. I don't want to say too much because I'm 2 games in.
I get that.
I'll end up eating my hat, Ollie. But yeah, it seemingly seems to be a better season than previously with the style of football that we are going to play. I think it's more Lowe being more comfortable with the squad that he now has. He's been able to bring in more players that he trusts with Dwayne Holmes, etc. So yeah, I think it's just confidence as well. And then once we've got that fluidity and confidence, I think we can be a real threat to the league. I say that and we'll end up 12th again, but hey ho, it's always nice to have a silver lining.
That's exactly it. And I think it's getting that excitement, isn't it? And that's what's really key, is having those thoughts and thinking, yeah, you know what? Maybe we are going to have a bit more fun this season. I'm glad. It sounds to me, obviously, this is the question that Gab's been asking consistently and always keen to know. Do you feel more confident, the same, or less confident than you did just before that first game, before you went to Bristol City?
Yeah, much more confident now. I wasn't expecting much coming out of Bristol City and Sunderland. To be fair, I'd probably been happy with a point. But to come out with 4 points, it's a great feeling to be able to get out there. Obviously we've got to keep the momentum going. Hello, Gab.
God, you've kept it going for me. Oh, thank you so much. I had a massive internet issue.
It's all right, but yeah, we've got to keep the momentum going. Although it's good beating Sunderland and Bristol and getting a draw against Bristol City, you got to keep it going. And the more and more we keep this, because it's a massive confidence game, football, especially with P&E, because sometimes where you've got, Deepdale at home, you got the Town End, something happens, you grumble, especially with the performances last year. So to beat Sunderland at home, it's a massive boost for the boys. And I think, if we're able to make Deepdale a fortress this season and carry on our away form of last season, then who knows where it could take us.
That is good to hear. So, yeah, we've just covered through some of the sort of squad building thoughts, where we feel they're at the moment, and then Ollie's thoughts on whether or not he's more or less confident than he was at the start. And I think he's eyeing up a playoff challenge, even if he's not said those words himself.
I think for every club, though, like even if you ask the teams promoted, their dream is to sneak into the playoffs. To do a Luton, to do a Coventry, just nibble in there, and then
then you've got a chance.
I think about 10 teams have a chance of getting into the playoffs in that 6th position. I think there's only a couple that are nailed on to be there from 1st to 6th. So,
who's the ones that surprised you, Ollie?
What teams?
Yeah.
So far, that's a question, because to be fair, I did anticipate. I anticipated Southampton and Leeds not to make the playoffs. So
interesting. Yeah, I think a few people were sceptical of Leeds.
Yeah.
So at the moment, you've got Ipswich on top of the league with back-to-back wins. The embryonic.
To be fair, I was quite sceptical about Ipswich, but they've seemingly come in and done the business. To be fair, I've been quite shocked at Sunderland. To be fair, I thought they would sweep us away. At Deepdale, I was anticipating, he could go either one way or the other. 1-0 or would get thrashed.
Well, they had Bradley Dack up top, didn't they? I mean,
they don't. They need a striker. I know they got Ross Stewart, but I'm not sure how long he's out for. And they brought in a young lad from Portugal, I believe. And then they've been linked with Cannon as well. But I mean, who hasn't at this stage? So. I mean, if Sunderland get a goal scorer, if they get Ross Stewart back, they're going to be right up and against it. Stoke, I already had them here and there around the playoffs, albeit they lost to Ipswich, but still think they'll come good with Neil.
They sort of divide opinion a bit, Stoke. I mean, I'm a bit more cautious on them maybe than you, because it is such a new team that's just coming together straight away.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I necessarily believe it can all gel instantly.
I think it's more for the trust in Alex Neil that I have. He's a fantastic manager, albeit, Paul Gallagher's gone there as well. So taking 2 of my favourites straight down to Stoke is probably there. You've got Ben Pearson and now Daniel Johnson as well. Ben Pearson, Daniel Johnson. They're only taking Alan Brown next season, and I might end up wearing a Stoke shirt. But yeah,
He'll finish 12th then.
Yeah, well, to be fair, yes, yeah. To be fair, I'd like it if they did, if we swap positions. But I can see Stoke sneaking in now. I've always said Coventry will be there. They show the quality. You've got Leicester, who are clearly probably too good for the Championship. I'm trying to think of probably. I'm actually shocked at Borough as well. I anticipated them to have a good start to the season, probably.
I think the thing with them, a little bit like Sunderland, they've just not got a striker. I mean, I don't know if you were going to say the same thing, Oli, but
need Archer, don't they?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's so important.
They're not having him. He's not. I tell you what, he's got a red and white shirt with his name on it as Cameron Archer, and so he'll not, hopefully not be going anywhere near Middlesbrough this season. But we'll see how that one plays out. But I think I've reevaluated Borough a bit, to be honest, because I agree. I was really expecting big things from them. Thought they were going to start this season fantastically. Thought they were going to be just really kicking on from that momentum they got at the end of last year. But losing Akpom and Archer, maybe I'm reevaluating now in my head, because they really need goals. And until we see who the player that comes in who's going to take that spot,
probably
I'm losing faith in him.
I agree with you in terms of they don't really have a goal scorer, someone that's going to give them the big numbers, but I do have a lot of faith in them in terms of being able to create chances. Like Morgan Rogers, I think, is one who started.
Yeah, that's good signing.
Yeah, really started really well. I think they've got a lot of Sammy Silvera, who they got from Australia. I feel like they've got a lot of creative players in that squad. Isaiah Jones, if he can recapture that form from year before last. But I think it just is who is going to be that sort of real goal scoring presence. And I think that's going to separate the good teams from the ones that win promotion, really.
100%. I mean, if they get Archer back, then, he's that focal point. Obviously, Oli will be, well, not very happy, probably smashing up the place like that Hulk punch in the background. But to be fair, I have Archer scoring double figures, whether that's in the Championship or the Premiership. He's just that good. With a nice eye in front of goal. He usually ends up in the back of the net, and albeit we're handling for Cannon back on loan. But if you gave me the option of Archer or Cannon, there's only one way you've got to look at it. The quality's there. He's ready for the Premier League, and I thought he'd get a go at Aston Villa last season. Unfortunately, Emery's not really giving him much opportunity. But if he's able to become the main man at Sheffield United, or comes back to Borough, which he's clearly going to be the main focal point, he'll get you goals. That's the way. That's the only thing I can say. And seemingly about Cannon, it's the only person on Peony's lips at the moment. And trust our luck, it's just been going on for ages. And Everton just stalling because they can't sign a new striker. And I'm watching Everton's transfer business more than press and North End. I'm like, just Everton linked to a striker. Come on.
You'll be there in the boardroom going, go on, get it done.
I'll be there with binoculars outside Finch Farm. Just waiting.
You get the police to sort of
just waiting outside Finch Farm, just like, come on. But yeah.
Well, ask, are you a striker looking to get into it?
Yeah.
Please come to this club. Leeds, Oli, Blade Oli. I mean, what do you think of the start that they've had? Because it's been a little bit underwhelming. They've flagged received so far. It feels like maybe them bringing a few more in between now and the end of the window, and the window then closing, will probably be quite a good thing for them, because they've got a lot of players that are sort of wanting out, and it's created a bit of an unhealthy dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. We did our predictions, 2 weeks ago, and I think I got them 9th. I really thought they were going to struggle this year. I thought coming in, they looked to be in the worst position of the relegated clubs. And I think a lot of that comes down to this. And, you can blame whoever. I know lots of people do throw the blame at Victor Orta in particular with the recruitment that they've done, because obviously so many players now are leaving on no-fee loans. They're getting wages off the books, but they're not getting any fees in. They're not able to replace these players with budget, with sort of anybody seemingly coming in. You've then got the players who are potentially going off on strike, like Nonto, if the reports are to be believed. And to me, that's a huge concern. So I had question marks about them anyway, just with the negative momentum coming from where they were last season. But to lose the players in the way that they have, to have this sort of negative attitude coming out with some of their players not wanting to play, they need this transfer window to end. But they also need some players to come in first. I'm a little bit concerned about them. I'm still fairly confident in my prediction because I just don't think this season looks to be the one for them. They need some time to consolidate. They need to rebuild their squad to fit the new manager. They need to rebuild their squad to fit their new sort of payment structure. The ownership will get it right, I'm sure they will, but I think they need a season of just figuring themselves out before they do that. And it's a shame it's not what they want to hear, but I'm not overly shocked by the start that they've made. To be honest, I think they were lucky to have the point that they've got because they could very easily have lost at Cardiff.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they had chances in the second half of that game. But yeah, I take your point totally. Oli, for P&E, Oli, what do you think of what's your prediction for the championship in terms of the top two? Do you think Leicester will get autos?
Yeah,
And then who do you think?
I think it'll be the match that kicked it all off. I think Leicester and Coventry will be 1 and 2 this season.
Interesting.
Leicester have got too much quality in Coventry. They've replaced Gyökeres with Taji Wright. They brought in so many quality players. You look at that right back, that Milan who comes in. It looks really exciting. They've reinvested the money that they brought in from a striker, and they're doing it the right way and putting it out there. I know Luton have gone up and building a championship super team for when they come back down next season. Both of them are doing fantastically well. I mean, as I said before, I have them top two. And then I've got Stoke. I did have Sunderland and Borough in. I'm going to probably stick with them too if they're able to get strikers in. So that probably leaves us, 2 more to go. Is that 2 more to go? I've said Leeds, Coventry, Stoke, Borough and Sunderland. So 1 more. It's anyone's game there. You can have West Brom. You could have probably Norwich. You could probably have anyone really. I'm not going to say P&E because I'm just not going to get that optimistic too soon. I'm a very half glass empty person when it comes to Preston. And to be fair,
hopefully next time we have you on the show, you'll be sort of saying we're definitely getting players.
Next time we have him on, they're going to be top 2. I'm telling you, I've felt it through this conversation. He's got more and more positive.
If we get top 2 next time I speak to you, I'll be singing the praises. No, I'm not going to get over the top soon about North End. I have to say I'd probably say West Brom nick 6.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, that's my top 6, and then obviously you look at them the teams going down. Can't remember what I said. I did say Huddersfield. I said Rotherham. Who else?
Do you reckon QPR are going to go?
QPR as well. That was the one that I was missing out. So I have QPR. I forgot what I said now. QPR, Huddersfield, and
Rotherham.
That's the one. I think Plymouth just edge it out of there. I think Plymouth will make the stay up, and obviously, you got Ipswich, who are all singing and dancing. And I think Wednesday will stay up as well. Albeit, they're still trying to find their way with a new manager. I was on a Wednesday pod a couple of days ago as well, and I did say you probably finish about 16th. But yeah, I also think
that'd be quite good for Sheffield Wednesday. To be fair, that's probably one of the more optimistic predictions.
Yeah, I think Ipswich will, albeit they've had a great start, I think they might fall away a bit.
Okay.
Middle of the season. I think they finished top half, but
yeah,
I'm not gonna go and say they're going to go smash this league and go back-to-back promotions, because I don't think they will. Yeah, bit of a realist when it comes to Ipswich, but more than happy to eat my words if McKenna gets it right. which he's seemingly done in League One. So, yeah, I think they'll probably finish 8th or 9th.
We'll see. Well, listen, Oli, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks to my co-host, Oli Mann, as well, from Sheffield United Way, too. I have to not get Oli Hargreaves on again because it caused all the confusion over the Olis. But no, it's been such a pleasure. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been EFL Debate, the Championship podcast, and we'll see you again very soon.